Hey guys, welcome to the Garbage Time Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Nolan. Today I'm joined by, I can't say producer Matt because we have a producer Matt.
You want to make up a fake name?
So we'll just call you producer Colette.
Sure.
Now they know your full name. Producer Colette for the first time ever. But before we get into the podcast, obviously we're not in our studio. I'm going to get to that soon. But first I need to tell you guys about Mack Weldon. Mack Weldon believes in smart design, premium fabrics, and simple shopping. Do you have Mack Weldon underpants?
I sure hope that they can give me some.
Yeah, because usually the producers
I've
just
heard
talk
good
about
things.
Their panties, but I'll do it. I'll talk about my producer's panties.
Panties?
Well, if you were wearing them, I would have felt uncomfortable talking about them. But since you're not,
Do they
let
call
me
them
tell you
panties?
about Mack Weldon. Yeah, I call them panties.
Okay.
It's my podcast. The thing I do know about Mack Weldon is that the shopping experience is super easy and lots of hot, almost naked dudes on the website. If that's what you're into. But it will be the most comfortable underwear, socks, shirts, undershirts, hoodies, sweatpants you will ever wear. I own a hoodie. I wear it all the time. All of their products are naturally antimicrobial, which means they eliminate odor, which dudes, that's huge. Not only does Mack Weldon's underwear, socks, and shirts look good, they perform well too. It's good for working out, going to work, or if you don't want to wash your clothes all the time, you could probably wear Mack Weldon because they're antimicrobial. So bonus, who does laundry? And they want you to be comfortable, so if you don't like your first pair, you can keep it and they will still refund you. No questions asked. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off using promo code GARBAGETIME, all one word, no spaces at checkout. That's MackWeldon.com, promo code GARBAGETIME. Coming up in a bit, you guys are going to hear my chat with this week's guest, JJ Redick, who was awesome. But first, clearly, like I said before, we are not in my studio. We are in the Fighter and the Kids studio.
It's a real studio.
Yeah, it is a real studio. The funny thing is that they are on the East Coast, and we are on the West Coast because
like a podcast exchange program.
last night I did Jimmy Kimmel Live. Can you see it? Can you see it? Yes. Yeah. I'm putting my hoodie into the camera. Anyway, so we're in the Fighter and the Kids studio there on the East Coast. They're doing live shows. They're doing a tour. So if you are in Boston tomorrow, Friday, 5/20, they're going to be at the Wilbur Theater. And then Saturday, they'll be in Philadelphia. And you can get their live show tour dates, the podcast, and their new digital series, The Fighter and the Kid 3D, at www.tfatk.com. Those guys are awesome and hilarious, so check that out. And big thanks to them for letting us use their studio. I think we're probably going to do something with them soon, which will be really sweet. But anyway, like I said, last night we did Kimmel, which was crazy. I would talk about my experience, but A, I blacked out for it because I was so nervous, and B, I fell asleep before it aired out here in LA. So it was really cool. It was the first time I had met Jimmy. And did you get to meet Jimmy?
I did not.
Oh.
But he had flown in from being on 1,000 different shows in New York a couple days before, so we could tell he was a little bit exhausted.
But he was wonderful. He
Still
was super
great.
nice. I came out and we talked a little bit about Bill Simmons. You know, when you go to commercial and you just see the host and the guest talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "Cool to have you here." Talk to Bill, and I was like, I knew it's our common thread.
That's the move. As soon as the commercial hits, you gotta start talking to him like you.
Well, yeah.
like
So
you knew him.
producer Colette was like, as soon as they go to commercial,
my
lean
one
in and
note.
start talking to him, and I'm like,
Then you look cool,
I didn't. So, but then I had that in my head the whole time, and I was like,
and you crushed.
no, I didn't lean in and talk to him. I just leaned in. Hashtag lean in. And then he started talking, which was fine, but I
Yeah.
looked like a fucking idiot.
No, it worked.
I just leaned hey, bro.
It worked.
No, it didn't work. Don't give me advice before I go out on stage ever again. Perhaps my favorite thing.
That's my job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what else is your job that I saw today online because people were tweeting at me? Apparently, when they drop you off at Kimmel, first off, big ups to our driver whose name was Paul Schaefer.
The other Paul Schaefer.
His name was literally Paul Schaefer, and he was drives for Kimmel people all the time, so we talked to him about that for a long time.
He told a story about tying Paul Newman's bow tie before he went to the Oscars.
Other people's stories out on the pod.
That was awesome.
We don't know if Paul Schaefer wants everyone to know about that.
I don't think Paul Schaefer even knows that we have a
Paul Schaefer
podcast.
listens to this podcast. So anyway,
Either Paul Schaefer.
They both do, actually. So he drove us there, dropped us off, and when you get out, the guy that escorted us into the show, and this is normal, I guess, for most people, but for me, it's not. So this guy's escorting us into the show, and he's like, "Okay, Katie, paparazzi will be up here on your left." And I was like, thinking he was joking. And they walk through a gate, and people are like, "Katie!" And I'm like, they were just told my name. There's no way anyone here is got to go to Kimmel tonight and get snaps at Katie Nolan walking in. So I just like looked at them and felt stupid. So I waved a little bit and then like went into the show, which I realize now if those people were there for me looks super rude. But in my brain, it doesn't connect
that's standard.
that
That's
anyone
standard.
would ever possibly be there for me. But apparently that was videoed and put on YouTube. And I saw it today. And producer Colette just walking with his stern face, looking really angry. How does it feel to finally have made it?
I wouldn't know. But I think I accomplished the mission of like looking intense and making sure that no one was going to fuck with you while we were walking in.
I think it was, so there were two like suited up glasses, jacked dudes behind us.
Yeah, so there's three. There's three. One of them had like a fluorescent checkered shirt on, so maybe stood out a little more. But it was the same thing, pretty much.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome to the fray.
Thanks. It's great. Feels awesome.
Yeah. So it was super cool. We had a really fun time. Like I said, I went back to the hotel, and the plan was to go out, and I just was really tired, and so. What
was your experience doing this as your second one versus doing Seth as your first one?
Not much different. I was just as nervous. It's still really nerve-wracking for me to walk into a room of like.
I think you were a little less nervous.
Were you there for? Yeah, you were there for Seth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably. It was my second one, but also like it's Kimmel. Like it was a big deal, and I've just wanted to meet him for a while. So that was.
Shout out Josh, producer.
Yep.
He was very helpful.
Very helpful.
Very friendly.
Yep.
Gave you some good tips beforehand.
Sure did, and some good beers.
And some good beers.
Yeah, it was good. I think eventually I'm going to get less nervous. I don't know when that's going to be, but I still just get really freaked out every time I have to do something
I told you this last night. It's the appropriate amount of nervous. I think last night was like the point in the graph of you doing these where you were nervous enough where you still cared and it was still a big deal and you still had fun. But as you keep going, you'll get less and less nervous, and hopefully that doesn't make you have less and less fun.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to not care.
Oh, no, you'll always care.
Yeah, it's always going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
But that's just my imposter syndrome shining through. Okay, let's get to JJ, because that's what everybody really cares about. Earlier this week, I talked to Clippers guard JJ Redick, who, it was a Skype interview, so I was really nervous that it's hard to like connect with people that you've never met before over Skype. JJ was phenomenal. So nice, so funny, and really willing to be open and say things about stuff I didn't think he would answer. So we talked about him becoming the first NBA player with his own podcast while in the NBA season. We talked about how he was hated during his Duke career, what really went down the night that DeAndre Jordan re-signed with the Clippers. And then we talked about his hobby, which is collecting watches, which to me is like the richest white guy hobby I've ever heard in my life. But he defended it, so take a listen. First of all, thank you for doing this.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Happy to do
Appreciate
it.
Right.
Congratulations on your Emmy.
Thank you.
Pretty outstanding.
Who told you to say that?
It's the only reason I came on the show.
Oh, yeah? Because of the Emmy? I knew it had to earn us something. Let's start out by talking about your podcast. You are an active starting NBA player, and you have a podcast. How's that going?
It's been a lot of fun. I actually had never listened to a podcast, and when Yahoo approached me about doing it, I was like, oh, this should be a lot of fun. So my wife, she was like, you need to listen to some podcasts, and the only one she had listened to was Serial. So I started with that. It was not a good starting point for my podcast, because I was like, there's a lot of murder in here and weird sexual tension. That's not what I'm going for. So but I delved into a bunch of different ones, and it's been a lot of fun. Honestly, it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of allowed me to explore like my creative side a little bit.
Yeah, which must be really cool. Were you worried that it would be seen as a distraction, since you also have to play a sport at a professional level?
I was, especially the trolls on social media. I'm not like the most active person on social media, but because of my podcast, I feel like I have to be more active in terms of promoting it and also responding to people's questions on there. And I knew I was going to get shit if like I started shooting bad or I started playing bad. So in my very first podcast, I just went ahead and like completely addressed that issue. And basically what I said was, it's about an hour of prep time every week in terms of securing a guest, writing out kind of what I want to do with the guest and the questions I want to ask, maybe doing a little research on the guest. And then the actual recording time is like another hour. So it's really 2 hours out of my day. So in terms of like eliminating something from my week. It wasn't like I eliminated, extra shots or like a lift out of the weight room. Like I just found time to do it.
How did Doc feel about it when you told him you were going to do it, or your teammates?
My teammates were excited. A bunch of them asked me like right away, like, can I come on? Blake was supposed to be my first guest,
Oh.
and then something happened in Toronto. So I'll have Blake on eventually. But my teammates have been great. Doc and the coaches really have been super supportive about it. I don't know that Doc listens to like every episode, but Lawrence Frank listens to just about every episode.
That's
So
pretty cool. Yeah, it's cool that they do that and they support you. You realize that you make the rest of us who basically just have a podcast look like assholes, because I'm like, guys, trust me, it's a lot of work, and then you come out here and you're like, I also play a sport and it's not that much work.
Listen, it is work. I say that because like the 2-hour thing, it's a lot of work.
And also, of course, I mean, it's easier for you to book a guest than me because I don't interact with Blake Griffin every day. I mean, it's like every other day, but it's not every day, so it's harder for me. I get what you're saying. I'm not.
To be honest with you, though, that has been the hardest part about doing the podcast is actually booking people. And I only do it once a week. Like Bill Simmons does it. He has got like 3 or 4 podcasts a week.
Yeah.
Like Zach Lowe for ESPN. He does one every week. Sometimes he does a bonus one. And I don't want to knock my profession, but NBA players are a fickle bunch.
Yes.
And I would say on average once every week I have someone cancel. And some weeks I've had up to like 3 cancels. And so I'm like scrambling last minute to find somebody to fill the spot. So that's a challenge, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, that's tough. We had backup scheduled for when you inevitably told me you couldn't call in for this Skype. So I've got people just waiting. I have to tell them to hang up. Have you had a favorite episode so far of your own podcast?
Yes, I have. And let me preface everything. This is going to sound terrible, but since maybe the 3rd or 4th, I've done 15 episodes, and I think the last one I listened to was episode 4, and I've tried to listen to the one since, and I get like this really anxious feeling. So
It's weird. I don't listen to mine back.
Yeah. Okay. So that's normal then.
No
Okay,
judgment.
good.
Judgment. I used to too, and then it was like I record it and I researched it. I can't spend more time listening to it.
I've done a couple on-camera things, like on ESPN Countdown or something like that, and I'll get home and my wife will be like, "Let's watch it together," and I'm like, "I don't want to watch it. I feel weird about it."
It's a bad feeling.
So, having said that, my favorite episode was one I did with a friend of mine, Ben Winston. He is a television producer for CBS. He produces the Late Late Show with James Corden. He's the guy that kind of came up with this carpool karaoke idea, which has been a huge success on the internet, on YouTube and whatnot. He also created The X Factor with Simon Cowell and Britain. He has directed and produced every one of One Direction's music videos, and he's done it. Yeah, and he's done a couple documentaries too. So he's big in kind of the television world, but he's also the funniest person I know, and we just have good rapport. So that podcast was my favorite. My other favorite one I did was a recent one we did with Jamal Crawford, and it was actually about 12 hours after our season ended. We got back from Portland. Jamal was kind of my ace in the hole that week. I knew it was going to be a tough week to get a guest, and I went over to his condo building the very next morning, and we literally had this cathartic experience where we just talked about the season and hashed out what went right, what went wrong. And it was interesting, the responses I got from it from Clippers fans. They kind of lived that through us as well, that kind of cathartic experience, and it brought them closure on the season.
That's like a dream booking for anyone else's podcast of like, they just got eliminated. We're going to have them come talk about their season. For you, it's like, oh, this feels good.
It was nice. It was nice, for sure.
An interesting experience to have with your first podcast. Did you feel really vulnerable having that conversation for an audience of people?
I did, but that was another thing that I kind of addressed in my very first podcast and in I guess my cold open or whatever you call it. I always have been very honest with the media, and I've tried to avoid as much as possible giving sort of cliched answers, or if they ask a question and I know what they're trying to get at, but I don't agree with it, I'm not going to give them what they want. I want to speak my mind, And I don't want to say it was easy to do it with Jamal, but having a guest like Jamal made it easy because we have a really deep like relationship, and we talk about these things on the bus or the plane all the time. And we sat in one of his conference rooms in his condo building, and it was like we were on the bus or the plane.
That's awesome. Do you have a dream guest?
Dream guest. Oh man. In terms of the basketball world, I would love to have Coach K on, and he's going to come on. He's committed to doing it.
Really?
We're trying to work around my schedule, and ideally we want to do it in person.
Because this is hard.
The podcast, the podcast works so much better in person. All of my favorite episodes, with the exception of one, have been in-person episodes. So I'm going to try to do it at some point this summer. In terms of a non-basketball guest, which I would love to have some of those people on, would be my man crush, which is Jason Sudeikis, Olivia Wilde's husband. It's funny. One of my best friends actually reps Olivia Wilde, and when she told me that, my wife, everybody's like, "Oh my God, Olivia Wilde," and I'm like, "Jason, you gotta hook me up with Jason."
It's an in with my man.
I feel like we need to be friends.
I would listen to that. That'd be very entertaining. What would be the first question you would ask Jason Sudeikis?
His sneaker collection. Apparently, he's got a ridiculous sneaker collection of Jordans and whatnot. And try to figure out where that came from.
Are you a sneaker guy? I mean, I feel like all basketball players are sneaker guys.
I'm actually not a huge sneaker guy. I find that the culture of it fascinating because I am a total watch geek, and it has become an obsession over the last 5 years.
Let's talk about that for a second. So you collect watches. Mm-hmm. So first question, you must have had to reach a level of wealth before you were like, I'm going to collect these really expensive things. You were definitely not 12 collecting Rolex.
Well, no, I wasn't. But you'd be surprised at some of the people I've come across that have legitimate collections, and they're 14 years old. And
really?
Yeah. And it's not because of their parents. These kids, they'll do summer jobs. They'll earn a $2,000 or $3,000, and then they'll go find a really specific vintage watch that they want.
Wow.
I was probably 5 years in, 2011. It was during the lockout. I had a lot of extra time on my hands.
Yeah, I always wondered what people did during a lockout.
And I just kind of stumbled. I had just bought what I would call a very expensive watch. I'm not going to give you the price total, but it was the most I'd ever spent on a watch, and I'd had 3 or 4 at this point.
For me, that would be $60, just to put this in comparison.
It's all relative, all right?
Yep.
So I said to myself, if I'm going to spend money on something, I need to know what I'm doing. And so I stumbled across a couple websites and watch blogs.
Watch blogs?
Yeah.
It's a thing.
There's a site called Hodinkee, Hodinkee, and it's sort of the preeminent source for both modern and vintage watches. And I become really good friends with the founder and with the CEO of the blog. The blog has a CEO. I guess it's more than a blog at this point, but they have investors. This is a whole freaking subculture.
It's a very weird hobby that you have, but I respect it. Are you more of a modern watch or a vintage watch guy? Are we talking pocket watches or?
Well, I can appreciate both. I've owned several watches from the 1960s, so I guess that would be roughly 50 or 60 years old. I've owned a bunch of modern watches. I have no problem. I kind of appreciate both, I guess. But to me, when I tell people I collect watches, I think they assume I have this watch drawer of 500 watches, and I really don't.
How many do you have?
Right now, I can't tell you the number because it's so low. I just cleaned out the majority of my collection.
So you sold them to other watch collectors?
Yes, correct.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm down well into the single digits right now.
So you catch a fish and throw it back into the ocean, but you just wanted to have it for a little bit?
I would describe, most collectors are this way. I would describe the whole process, it's just madness. I have a disease. There's a few watches that I own that I would just never sell, and one of which is I was gifted a dress watch when I got engaged, and I wore that watch on my wedding. I had my wedding date inscribed on the back, and I've worn it literally to every wedding I've been to in the last 6 years since my own wedding, and it holds a a very meaningful moment to me. So I would never get rid of that. But anyway, so I think people like assume I have all these watches, but for me, it's more about like the education, I think, and learning and sort of developing like a knowledge and an expertise about something that maybe for most people is a little off the beaten path.
That's really interesting, especially since like now everybody just checks their cell phone for the time. So you're collecting a thing that like maybe not even be a thing soon.
Let me ask you a question. So
Okay.
let's say you have discretionary income.
Let's say.
Or maybe you did not even.
No, let's say. Let's pretend.
Like, would you, like, I assume, I don't want to make a generalized statement here,
No,
but I
go
would
for
assume
it.
like a successful woman maybe has a shoe fetish, or a handbag fetish. I know a lot of women in sports, like they have a shoe fetish.
Yeah. See, I hate shoes. I
Okay.
like sneakers. But I'm not like cool enough to wear them. But I buy them and I look at them and I like them.
What about travel? Do you travel?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
I would
So-
say my thing is food or booze. Like I'll buy expensive booze
There you go.
just to have it, just show people like check out that aged Jameson, which to
Right.
me sounds fancy.
Which for some people, they go to 7-Eleven and buy a bottle of Boone's Farm wine, and they're okay with getting drunk that way.
Right.
Yeah. So I think my wife and I, we always talk about like it's like balancing. I think anybody, I don't care what you make, like you have to balance like doing or having, and I think that's sometimes a struggle because from a financial point of view, like I can't play basketball forever, so I've got to save money too.
It's good to keep perspective on things. Speaking of you playing basketball, we should probably talk about how you play basketball as opposed to watches and podcasts. Let's go back to your time at Duke. You're one of the most hated Duke players of all time. Feels weird to say that to a nice person's face. But why do you think that is? Are you proud of that, or are you like ashamed of it? And what caused that? Because you seem like a very nice guy.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. When I was at Duke, I didn't really know how to react to sort of the animosity that Duke basketball teams face, especially when they go on the road. And I think because I was white too, I was kind of the target of that animosity from opposing teams' fans, especially like the student section. And there's an instinct that you could have when that happens, and it's either to kind of like the fight or flight thing,
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to essentially, and did it subconsciously, but I created this like persona on the court, which only made things worse for me. And then when I got done at Duke, I was almost ashamed of it, I think. And I don't know why I did this, but I almost tried to like distance myself from being the Duke guy. And, but now, I mean, I'm going to be 32 next month. I'm like incredibly proud of not only my Duke career, but I'm proud to be a graduate, and I'm proud to be a part of that community. I just, everywhere I go, I meet Duke grads and Duke people, and they're all fantastic.
You've said before that you maybe deserved some of the hate because you were
Yeah.
sort of a prick. In what ways would you say that you were sort of a prick?
So there's a lot of head bobbing, the shit-eating grin.
Can you give me an example? Just show me that.
No, it's got to be in the moment.
My bad.
Like you bob your head like going back down the court after a big shot, and
Just
I
got
believe
cocky.
and I believe a couple times, it was by accident actually, but a couple times at road arenas, I would make a 3-pointer and I would throw up the shocker. I did it by accident, but then there was like AP got a picture of it, and then it kind of went out. Thank God that didn't happen before Twitter and social media.
I know.
Honestly, I will say this: if I had gone to school and behaved the way that I did during this era of social media, I don't know that I would have been able to finish 4 years at Duke.
Why do you say that?
I was my first 2 years at Duke. I was not in a frat, but I probably behaved more like a frat kid than a basketball player.
And you think that people would have would have jumped on you for that on social media?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Interesting. So do you have any advice for kids that are playing college ball now, that like what they should do and how they should act?
Ooh. I think anybody now, I don't care if you're a college basketball player, a pro athlete, anybody, you know this, like, you see it all the time where someone doesn't behave in a certain way or someone disrespects someone and that behavior goes viral. Like you don't tip someone or, you go off on an attendant at a tow truck.
I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, I don't either. But no, I mean, so those things happen to, I think, everybody. So I think everyone now is just more cognizant of how they treat people, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I really do.
I agree. Do you over tip now just in case?
I don't over tip. I will never, I don't think I've ever done it as a professional athlete. I've never tipped less than 20%.
I mean, that's just a normal, nice human thing to do.
But even if I have the worst service.
Yeah, me too.
An asshole, like I'll just be like 20%, done. But I mean, I can't remember the guy's name. Was it the McCoy from the Philadelphia Eagles?
Was it LaShawn? I think it was LaShawn.
I think it was
Yeah.
It was. And apparently he got terrible service and left $1 tip or whatever he left.
But you're LaShawn McCoy. Like, give at least 15. At least.
That's why I do it.
Yeah.
And also I understand too, because look, I worked in a restaurant. Like I've worked in the service industry before, and my most frustrating thing was, going to work every day and feeling like, even at that age, like I was like, I'm going to do the best job I can, even though all I'm doing is working at a barbecue restaurant.
Yeah.
And when I didn't get tipped well, or the other waiters or waitresses didn't tip me out, I was frustrated by that. So I think I'm cognizant of that when I tip at restaurants.
You are the common man, and I like it.
I try to be.
I like it. Gonna move on from the hated thing, but I'm interested to know, when fans, and you said student sections, chant things to you when you were at Duke and got really mean, does that really get to you, or did it motivate you, or were you able to tune it out completely?
Yeah, that's. I think it was a challenge at first. I grew up in a pretty sheltered household. I was the middle of 5 kids in a very conservative household in Virginia, so I wasn't exposed to a lot of things growing up. And that first road game against Clemson my freshman year, I think I was a little over 18 years old, and to hear those things being said to you and those things screamed at you, like you're just not prepared for it. And so initially there was like a kind of a tough adjustment period. And then it got to the point, like maybe my sophomore year, where I really embraced it and I enjoyed it. And I kind of, does it sound weird, but I kind of got off on it to an extent. And then as I got older and like matured, and even now I still get some anti-Duke stuff said to me, but it's just, at this point in my life, like I've heard literally everything you could ever say about me, and really everything that you could say about my family members. So it's like, whatever, I don't care. I'm indifferent at this point.
Yeah. Were there ever any chants or signs that you actually found clever or you laughed at, even though they were about you?
The best one I ever saw was my sophomore year at Maryland, and there was a sign that said JJ drinks his own pee. Do you? No, I never have.
Not anymore.
No, but I just, sometimes the most clever things are the simplest things. And it was just clever to me. I got a good chuckle out of that.
Did you ask I would ask the kid for the sign and taking it home with me.
No, but the same game, there was a group of kids sitting kind of mid-court, and they had T-shirts, and there was a picture of my T-shirt on it, or a picture of me on the T-shirt. So I went over to the kids during pregame to see what the shirt said, and it said, when I grow up, I want to name my kid JJ Redick, and on the back it said, and beat him every day.
Oh.
Which is kind of crazy, again. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the game, there was probably like 5 seconds left, and I think I had 26 points that game, and we won. So at the end of the game, I kind of walked over their way, and I was trying to get them to give me a T-shirt. And Coach K like ripped me off the floor. He berated me for that one. So I never got the T-shirt.
It's pretty amazing that they're trying to call you the asshole while saying that they would beat their kid, but some people aren't great at joke
like there's certain things you can joke about. Not one.
You're the child abuser, and I'm the asshole. Unclear on that. More with JJ in a minute, but first I want to tell you guys about Super Beets, a circulation superfood powder that helps support my heart and healthy blood pressure too. It gives me amazing energy and amazing stamina. With Super Beets, I get all the benefits without the bad taste, calories, or added sugar. Mix it in water or a smoothie for a jitter-free energy boost. You'll love the taste of Super Beets and feel results in as little as 20 minutes, guaranteed, or you don't pay. Plus, Super Beets now comes in black cherry flavor, so if taste was holding you back before, now is the time to try it. Get a bonus 30-day supply free with your first order. Plus, get the book Beat the Odds free and free shipping too. It's guaranteed or your money back. Call 800-951-9013. That's 800-951-9013 or go to beatsbykatie.com. That's BEETS by Katie.com. Not headphones. Those aren't headphones. Today's podcast is also brought to you by Wix. A great business needs a stunning website, and with Wix.com, you can do it all by yourself. Wix.com makes it easy to look amazing online no matter what type of business you're in. Show off your images in a beautiful gallery, grow your contact list, and get all your social media in one place just the way you want. Your customers are going to love it. So what are you waiting for? Show the world what you can do. Go to Wix.com and create your stunning website today. It's easy and free. Who doesn't love free shit? Says the girl in a Jimmy Kimmel hoodie and Fox Sports t-shirt and Reebok Z-Print sneakers. Okay, back to JJ Redick. When you were coming out of Duke, there was talk that you weren't big enough or athletic enough to be a star in the league. Did you ever buy into that? Did that affect you, that storyline, or did you ignore it?
I think I bought into it a little bit. And it's hard to really say what my expectation level was of myself as a player coming out of college, because as late as my junior year in college, and my junior year I was an All-American and National Player of the Year, like as late as my junior year I was taking Italian at Duke because I thought I was going to have to go overseas and play. And then I had a great senior year and became a lottery pick. But I don't think I ever expected to be like a superstar or an all-star or anything, but I certainly bought into that narrative early on in my career, and not playing my first 2 years also really hurt my confidence. And it really wasn't until towards the end of my third year that I felt like, okay, I belong in this league. And then from that year on, I feel like I've made steps every year to get better.
I was going to say, at what point did you realize that you were more than that? But so you would say that was around like your third year?
Yeah, I think that I made steps all during my third year, but the playoff run we made in Orlando my third year, we made it to the finals in 2009. And in Game 5 in the first round, Courtney Lee, the starting shooting guard, broke his face, literally broke his face. So I got to start Game 6 on the road.
Is that like you break the whole
He like shattered his
face?
he like shattered something here. Dwight Howard hit him with an elbow coming down on a rebound. Like his own teammate broke his face. Very unfortunate.
That's always fun.
Yeah, so I got to start the next game, which was a closeout game. We won on the road in Philly. And then I started the next series. We played Boston, and they were the defending champs. They had the big three, and I got to start all 7 games. Started a Game 7 at Boston on the road.
What was that like?
It was one of the most memorable games of my life. Not just because we won, but like Game 7 in Boston with the big three defending champs. Like there's not really a better storyline. And so for a young player, like I felt like I belonged at that point. It was really that playoff run that kind of cemented my belief, like, okay, I can play. And I think part of my deep, deep subconscious really believes that I'm a good player. And each year I've kind of allowed that subconscious to come out more and more. And partly it's because of the work that I've put in. I've really worked not just at basketball, but on my body and my diet and my condition and all that stuff.
Yeah, you're great. I don't think you need me to tell you you're great. You should believe that you're great.
Thank you. Well, I do now. I do think I'm a good player now.
I mean, you're okay. Don't get a big head about it. You're fine.
I'm just saying, like, those first 2 years, they psychologically, like, they affected me for sure. I would have that. Yeah.
I can imagine. We need to talk about last July, because as an internet person who lives on Twitter, that night with DeAndre Jordan and the re-signing and the is Mark Cuban driving around trying to get there, and are they all at DeAndre's house not letting him out or talk to anybody, and then the emojis on Twitter. You were there, right, at his house, at DeAndre's house?
Yes, I was there.
What actually went down?
All right, so it was like we got over there. there was about 10 or 12 people in the house, and more so than us pitching him on why he should come back, I believe he had already made up his mind before that meeting. And in fact, Blake had told me the night before that he had already made up his mind. So the meeting to me was more about us just hashing out some things as a group, and DeAndre just kind of hearing, I think, from us how important he is to our team. As soon as the meeting was over, his mom ordered some chicken. They went and picked it up. They brought it back. There was a group of us playing spades for a while on the dining room. And then at about 5:30, I looked at DJ and I was just like, "Hey man, I had my son was really young. He was less than a year old at the time. So I was like, "Hey man, like I got to get back home. Chelsea needs me. Is it cool if I leave?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's fine." So I left at 5:30 or 6, and then I'm driving back, and all the guys are texting me as these things are coming out on Twitter now that we're holding him hostage. So Blake texted me, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm thinking about putting this picture of a chair in front of a door." You barricaded the door. And I was like, "Go for it, man." And I told this story before, but it's funny. I was so giddy that day that I missed the exit. I was driving from Houston back to our off-season home in Austin, and I missed the exit for Austin. And at about 11:30, I thought to myself, like, why am I still driving? I should have seen the Austin airport by now. And so I kind of did the location on my iPhone app, on my map, and I was on a frontage road in San Antonio about to run out of gas. So I'd driven an hour and a half out of the way.
That's not a short amount of time. You
No.
should have noticed that sooner, I feel like.
I don't know how I missed that one. That was embarrassing.
So Chandler Parsons tweets a plane emoji. You tweeted a car.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, how much thought went into the emoji that you were going to tweet? Like, that was a huge night for emojis. That was the turning point for emojis. Also, fun to point out that Paul Pierce tweeted a picture of an emoji because he's the most adorable old man in the world.
I was with him when he
Oh, God.
that, and I have no idea how that happened. He's like, "I'm going to tweet a spaceship," and I was like, "Cool, man." And then all of a sudden, I'm like, "Paul, what is this?" The car thing, honestly, I have nothing against Chandler, but he was so involved in this recruitment of DJ, and so like when it broke, like I got to Houston at probably 12:30 in the afternoon that day, and I'm thinking to myself, how is this not on Twitter yet? That we're getting ready to get DeAndre back, and DeAndre's going to sign with us tonight. Like, how is this story not broke? How is no one from either side kind of leak this to a source?
Next time you think that, by the way, feel free to call me,
All
and
right.
I will leak that. I'll be happy to be your source, or you be
All
my
right.
source.
Yeah, right. Okay, no problem.
Good.
And then within like 15 minutes of me being in Houston, I think it was Mark Stein from ESPN. He tweeted something out, and within 5 minutes, Chandler tweeted out a plane,
Which
like
was great.
as if he was getting on a plane to go to Houston, and which I thought was funny. I mean, it was funny, and so I just was like, I'm already here, and my mode of transportation that day was a vehicle. It was not a blue car, as I tweeted out. Yeah,
The accuracy really would have helped had you gotten, whatever
there's
color car.
there's not a black Tahoe emoji.
Well, I think you could have made some phone calls and maybe gotten a Tahoe emoji made. But the overall takeaway from that for me was that it seems like you all are pretty good friends as a team, which I always think is cool to see as a fan. Would you say there's anyone in the team that there's like a narrative about that the media thinks or fans think is one way and they're completely wrong?
Everybody thinks Jamal Crawford is this great guy. He's a fucking ass. I'm kidding. I don't. It's funny because I think being in LA and being on a good team. We're not a championship team yet, but being on a good team and being in LA, I do think we get scrutinized a lot, and we also have certain personalities on our team that get scrutinized a lot. But I think people think there's like this disconnect, I think, between like Chris Paul and his teammates, which I don't see. And I'm very close with Chris, and I think everybody loves Chris. I think he's one of the best teammates I've ever had. And overall as a group, I played 7 years in Orlando and certainly built some nice relationships there. But overall as a group, like the relationships that I've built in 3 years in LA have been, the strongest relationships I've built in the NBA.
That says a lot. obviously you're not going to want to talk about it too much, but with the drama that happened with Blake Griffin and an equipment manager, is that equipment manager just like a dick? What happened? What was the vibe in the locker room after that happened? How do you handle something like that?
Matthias has a smart mouth, all right? I asked him about it afterwards. He's like, dude, that's how I grew up. That's how me and my boys talk to each other. I'm like, all right. But you're 27 now. Like, you don't have to be such a smart ass.
Right.
No, we all love Matthias. And it's funny because Blake and Matthias are friends. Prior to that, we had all kind of hung out together. And so for them to go to dinner together on the road, that wasn't abnormal. That was pretty much most road trips. I don't have anything new to add in terms of what happened. I mean, whoever leaked the story pretty much got it accurately. But, I would just say the next day when the news kind of trickled down, we were in Toronto getting ready to play like a 12:30 game. And as guys were kind of talking about it, we were all just in shock. Like, it just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that Blake did it, and then it didn't make sense that it was Matthias who was on the receiving end of it. So it was just surprising. And then it turns out, as the season progressed, like Blake's initial injury, his quad injury, was really what was keeping him out for a longer period of time. He had been cleared weeks for the hand injury. So I can't say that like our season would have been any different had he not done it.
Yeah. Was that a hard thing to deal with? I bet you were like fielding questions about it every day.
Yeah,
The media makes it bigger than it is.
Right. And again, part of it, I think, is the market and players we have on our team. But like, it just seems like my 3 years in LA, we've dealt with an abnormal amount of controversy and drama. My first year here was the Donald Sterling thing, which was absolute. It was just insane. And it was a hard thing to get through for all of us. And then the DeAndre thing, last year losing to Houston the way we did in the playoffs, and then the subsequent articles that were written about certain guys on our team. I don't want to. I'm not saying we're victims at all. I don't believe in that kind of narrative, the victim narrative. I don't believe in it. But we've certainly brought some of that on ourselves, and some of it is because of who we are and where we play.
It's a tough market with a lot of people looking for a lot of headlines. You've had quite an eventful few years there.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, speaking of Blake, in a basketball sense, both he and Chris Paul went down when you guys are playing Portland. What is the vibe amongst the team when something like that happens? Is it sort of like we did everything we could, great season, everyone, or was there like we could still pull this off? I mean, how do you react to that?
Initially, it was, I don't want to say it was devastation because it wasn't that severe, but we were all pretty down that night in Portland after Game 4. Chris was very emotional. He really takes his craft and his job seriously, and he puts a lot into it in terms of preparation, the mental side of things. Like, the guy works his butt off, and so I think for him to have that injury at that time, it was just hard, and then for us to see him that upset was hard. But by the next day, your mindset is completely different. Like, you have no choice. You can't feel sorry for yourself. So your mindset at that point is like, okay, we've got 3 games left. We've got to figure out how to win 2 of them. I think both games we lost after that. We gave good efforts and we had a chance to win. We were up double figures at home in Game 5 and really just played awful defense in the second half. And then, the Game 6 in Portland, I think we earned a lot of people's respect that night just for the fight we put up. There's no moral victories in sports, though. So we were all, again, Jamal and I talked about it, but we were all pretty devastated afterwards.
Yeah, I can imagine. As a fan, when your team gets eliminated, it's hard to watch the rest of the playoffs because you're just sad and bitter. For a player, is it the same way? Is it hard for you to watch the rest of the playoffs now, or is it sort of just like you love basketball, so you watch?
Yeah, it's difficult to transition from like a competitive mindset to a fan mindset, and I am a fan of the game, but I generally speaking do not watch any of the playoffs. Like, even last year, I stopped watching. I didn't watch any of the conference finals. I think I watched 2 of the finals games, and I didn't really enjoy that either. But this year I have watched a little bit. It's difficult to watch because I'm just kind of like, man, I wish I was still playing. Like I want to play. But the reason I'm watching is because I have the podcast, and so I feel like if anything happens or if there's something that I want to talk about on the podcast, like I need to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's why I watch sports.
Now that I'm a media member, you know?
Yeah, once they pay you to do it, it's tough to not do it.
Yeah.
Real quick, who do you think is going to win the championship?
If you had asked me at the start of the playoffs, I would have just said like Warriors, no doubt. But I do think of all the teams in the West this year, I think OKC is probably the best matchup in terms of a team that could potentially beat the Warriors. So I think it'll be Warriors out of the West. I think it'll be Cleveland out of the East. I think that series is going to be amazing. I really do. But ultimately, I got the Warriors winning Game 7 at home.
So it's going to be an exciting one.
Yeah, for sure. The way Cleveland's playing right now is they're playing at an extremely high level, and they've almost changed the way they played from last year. I mean, even Paul Millsap, after they got eliminated in the conference semifinals last week, he said, you know, the way they played last year in the playoffs and the way they played for most of this season, like we prepared for them to play a certain way, and then for those 4 games they played completely differently, and they're hitting all these threes, they're spreading the floor, they're playing small at times.
They look like a different team. They're
totally.
Even, yeah, it's hard to prepare for that.
It is, and in a way, I think losing last year to Golden State, and with Golden State going small those last couple games, I think it changed the mindset of how Cleveland plays, and they realized, well, we have to be able to play like Golden State in order to beat Golden State.
Yeah. Was Steph Curry your MVP choice? Is that the right call? Who's the MVP?
Steph, by far.
Yeah.
First of all, you know, he was the MVP last year. Like they were the best team last year. I think you reward that more than anything. It's how All-Stars should be rewarded. It's how MVPs, it's how all NBA teams should be rewarded. People don't want to know this, but like, if you're on a bad team, like, listen, someone's got to have the ball in their hands and someone's got to score. And I'm not saying like you would like LeBron, Russell Westbrook, like there's plenty of guys that could have won MVP, but the Warriors had a historic season. Steph had one of the most efficient offensive seasons in the history of the NBA.
Yeah.
It was a no-brainer. He should have been unanimous. There's really no argument against it. There's not. And I know what LeBron said about like how we value MVPs, and I think in other years you could probably make a case for different guys, but this year it's Steph far and away.
Like last year in the final when they did the MVP of the final, and there was the argument that it should have been LeBron. Did you like agree with that narrative that like because he was the most valuable player on his team, even though his team lost, that he should have gotten the?
LeBron was the most valuable player of the series. There's no question. I mean, Cleveland gets beat 4-0. It's not even close without LeBron. But I mean, you could say that at any time. Like it's like when a guy gets hurt. Like, well, they're not as good as without him. Yeah, okay, of course they're not. So to me, you reward the winning team. Iguodala should have been it. You could also make an argument for Steph, even though he wasn't doing what he's doing this year during that series. But yeah, it goes to the winning team for sure.
All right. Good to know your take. We end every podcast with 10 silly questions, really quick answers. Call it the garbage 10. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What was your first AOL screen name?
Oh, my God. I don't know how I remember this. It was JJ Shoot a 3.
Good. Okay. Ranch or blue cheese with your wings?
Oh, man. I go back and forth on this all the time. If I had to pick one for the rest of my life, ranch.
What was the first concert you ever went to?
I don't know how I remember this either. Third Eye Blind.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite superhero?
Okay, it's Batman. But you could also make an argument that Batman isn't a superhero.
That's a stupid argument.
But people do argue that because he doesn't have any like superpowers. But
money is a superpower.
Batman.
I bet he has a sick watch collection.
Yeah.
Do you put ketchup on top of your fries or on the side?
On the side.
What's your guilty pleasure television show that you're very embarrassed to admit that you watch? Please say Basketball Wives.
No. God, no. $1 Million Listing, New York. I love Redick.
That has been an answer on this podcast before. Do you floss before you brush your teeth or after you brush your teeth?
Brush, floss, mouthwash.
Okay. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
What was the last movie you went to see in the theater?
I tried to go watch Zootopia with my son. He's under 2 years old. He's not ready to go to the movies yet. We left after 30 minutes.
Because he was crying?
No, it was actually very interesting. He wouldn't sit in his seat. So then I took him to the hallway, and I had to hold him. And there was only one place that we could stand, and I couldn't set him down. So my back started going into a spasm because I was holding him on one side, and I took him out. It's the only time I've ever seen him throw a temper tantrum.
As a person who goes to movies and doesn't have a kid, thank you for being the person who takes your kid out when that happens.
There was like 6 people in the theater too, but I just said, like, I'm not going to ruin this experience for them. So I took him out.
We appreciate you. The real MVP. Okay, last question. You're about to be put to death. What's your final meal? Tell me the entree, the dessert, and the beverage.
I'm going to go very highbrow right now.
Okay.
The beverage is easy. I'm going to have a bottle of Pinot Noir, Burgundy from DRC. It's probably the best wine in the world from France. Dessert, I would say something with chocolate in it, preferably some sort of chocolate mousse. And for my meal, it would be the tasting menu from French Laundry.
Wow. That is the bougiest answer
I know.
we've ever had.
But it's the last meal. Like, I'm gonna do it. That meal in itself probably costs like $8,000, but we're doing it.
We've had people say
I'm
Chick-fil-A, and you're like, I want French Laundry's tasting menu.
Getting every supplement too. Like, if they have caviar, put it on there.
All of it. Shaved truffles.
White truffles, shave it on. I'll get the prime ribeye. I want it all. I want it all.
JJ, thank you so much for doing this. This was really fun.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
If you ever need a guest for your podcast, call me.
I believe me, I do. I'll call you. All
right, cool. All right, thanks again to JJ. That was awesome. He's great.
Dope.
He's dope. Dope.
Okay,
it's time for junk mail.
You've got junk mail.
All right, producer Colette.
So I
Usually
read this?
Dave reads it, so you can. Dave's gonna be so upset.
This is from Charlie Potts. All right. Pretzel power rankings.
Okay.
Twisted knots, rods, sticks, chalk covered, as in chocolate covered, nibblers, sourdough, braided twists.
Okay. What's a twisted knot?
The twisted knot is like the
A regular pretzel.
It
has to be,
It looks
'cause
like
there's
a
no other-
DNA. It looks like a DNA type
No,
situation.
that's a braided twist.
That's a braided twist.
No. Twisted knots are a regular pretzel.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Then there's rods, which are the thick sticks. Then there's
Yes.
sticks, which are the small ones that come in those little coffin
Yeah.
boxes. Chocolate covered. Nibblers, which would be like
like the pounder bags. They call
nibbler.
them pounders. They're like the little ones.
No. So I'm going to explain them. And you lay out.
The
okay?
bags are called pounders. though.
Nibblers are like the Snyder's honey mustard bits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sourdough are like the big ones they look like twisted knots, but they're thicker.
Isn't sourdough more a type of?
Yes, but I'm explaining to you what he means. And what he means is the sourdough ones
You
are
don't
the
know
big.
this guy. Sorry, keep going.
And braided twists are the ones that look like DNA.
Okay. Yeah.
Are we clear now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My podcast, my rules.
Couldn't all of
I
these-
miss Dave and Matt so much.
Couldn't all of these be chocolate covered though?
So the point isn't to
I'm just trying to
derail the
derail-
junk mail question. The point is to just take it and then answer it.
Okay.
Is that
answer.
clear?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so normally this is where you're allowed to discuss with.
Aren't we?
You're
We're
awful at
discussing
this.
right now.
No, we're not. You're
Okay.
trying to ruin the actual rules of the game.
I'm just trying to
I'm trying
clarify.
to establish the rules so we can play the game.
All right.
Okay.
A lot of pretzel fans out there are going to want clarification on this kind of stuff.
And I just gave it.
Okay.
My word is fact.
Okay. Rank them.
Sourdough's out. I hate them. I hate the big pretzels that come in the jugs that are like.
So you're not even including them in the rankings?
No, I'm
They're
putting
just
them in
out.
last.
They're last. Okay.
They're in last because I can't. Those are the rules of the game. You have to rank them all.
Mm-hmm.
So sourdough's my bottom. Total bottom. Don't
Okay.
care about them. I know you're disappointed. Then we're going to go Then we're going to go. All right. Then we're going to go rods because they're good, but like they're harder to eat. And when you bite one, like all the pretzel falls apart onto the ground.
That is true.
Same gripe that I have with those big sourdough ones. Like you can't, it hurts your teeth. They're not enjoyable to eat.
You lose more pretzel than you eat sometimes.
The only benefit really of rods is like if you have to grab a bunch and go. You can grab
what situation would you be like, I gotta go, but man, I need some pretzel rods?
When I did my first radio show, all they had in the green room was water and pretzel rods. And so I grabbed 5 pretzel rods and I was like, wow, these are very portable.
And the nice thing about pretzel rods, I know you have them low in your ranking, but you can pretend they're cigars, you know? You can like hang out with them and look cool.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. They're good for dipping too if you're going to dip them in some hummus.
Very true. Some what?
Hummus.
Or hummus. Either one.
Hummus. Okay, so rods are then the next ones.
So
but that's just because, I really like, well, I guess, okay, braided twists are next. They're good, but I know they're healthy and I don't give a fuck.
Wait.
Like the honey wheat braided twists.
Wait. You're saying that braided twists as a pretzel are healthier than other forms of pretzels?
Because they say the word wheat in them.
That's a hot take.
Yeah. I'm fairly certain they're billed as the more healthy pretzel alternative.
Okay.
Because they're lighter, they're like a blonde color, and you see the flecks of wheat, which means health food.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree to disagree, I guess.
You didn't even make your argument against, but that's fine.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go braided twists are next because they're fine, but the sweetness in them I don't need all the time. I don't crave that. Mm-hmm. Like I'm cool without it. So then we've got sticks because I like the little sticks much better than the rods, and you can eat like 6 of them at a time.
The salt to pretzel ratio, I feel like, is a little bit off on the sticks.
Well, so here's what you're doing wrong there.
Yeah.
You got to take the little coffin that they come in, dump out all the pretzels, and you got all the salt at the bottom.
Yeah.
So then when you put the pretzel in your mouth, just sprinkle a little
No.
salt in.
Oh, no, I was going to go the other way. There's too much salt, not enough pretzel.
Well, that's just blasphemy.
Okay, that's how I feel.
What do you mean when you say too much salt? I'm not understanding.
Because they're so thin, like this, it's basically the same amount of salt that you're going to get on a rod, but there's probably like a 4th amount of pretzel.
So the problem is
Too much salt?
no such thing.
Okay, all right.
No such thing. So then after sticks,
I just have a problem in general with the whole chocolate covered thing because you can cover all of these in chocolate. So to
Sure.
me, that's like a number one on a different type of situation.
I
It's
get
your
what you're
podcast,
saying,
your
but you
podcast.
just have to accept the rules he's established and live in that world. You don't get to be like, I'm going to go live in this planet. This is the
Okay.
planet we live on right
Okay.
now. You've got to add it to the rankings.
All right.
After sticks, we're going twisted knots. They're classic. I like them. Delicious. But the 2 we have left, they can't compete.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to go nibblers because honey mustard and onion pieces from Snyder's are so good.
Mm-hmm.
They're so good that like I don't let myself eat them that much, especially because they make your breath smell for 4 straight days.
That is true.
Regardless of how many times you brush your teeth.
They're like on the like snack breath power rankings.
Yeah.
Right behind Cool Ranch
Doritos.
Doritos.
Yep.
Yeah.
I knew where you were going with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
There's no way to get rid of that.
Does
taste.
anyone eat Cool Ranch Doritos anymore?
I do. I love them. But he's right. Like you're going to smell like onion powder for.
You could have had one a
You're
week
married.
ago, and I'd be like, "Did you have Cool Ranch Doritos a week ago? Like, just one of them?"
Yeah, but the cool thing about Cool Ranch Doritos is like you
They're
get
cool?
snacks for the rest of the day because they're all over your fingers.
What
and under your
is
fingernails.
well, speaking of derailing, what is the
I think it's like garlic, salt, onion powder.
but it looks like it's got like all the Roy G. Biv happening. There's blue and red and
Yeah.
like.
I think they cut down on that a little since the world has started to be like artificial is bad.
Yeah, I feel like when Four Locos went out, the Cool Ranch Doritos guys were like, "Shit, we're next. Let's like switch things up a little bit."
Yeah, maybe.
Sorry, keep going. Pretzels.
What are you ever talking about?
Don't junk mail questions usually take like 30 seconds, and
Yep.
this is another like 10 minutes.
Because you've derailed it completely.
This is the only shot I'm getting on the podcast. I'm
Yeah,
taking it.
you have missed.
What did Wayne Gretzky say?
You have missed. He said you have missed 100% of the shots. Don't ever go on Katie's podcast ever again.
Okay,
was what
good.
Wayne Gretzky said. So then we've got nibblers we're in second, and of course topping the list is chocolate covered because who doesn't love a chocolate covered pretzel? It's like peanut butter and jelly. It's like they found each other and were like, yeah, where were you all my life?
Can I just like?
No, you can't just. What?
Okay, soft.
We're done now. It's over.
Oh,
The
okay.
logo went away, which means podcast done. No, what did you want?
I was gonna say if you added soft into the equation.
That's the first thing you've added to this podcast.
Thank you.
Soft pretzels are at the top. Soft pretzels trump chocolate covered. If you're assuming in all these situations these are really good versions of these things, and a good soft pretzel is better than sex. It's so good.
I've heard you say that before.
It's my motto. I say it all the time.
Yep.
Listen, guys, great show tonight. And if I've ever told you before, a good soft pretzel is better than sex. That's how I end every staff meeting at garbage time.
Let's end the next show with that.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's also end this podcast now. That's it. That was really great. This was really fun. We'll be back to do this again next week from our studios in New York. Be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes and rate our podcast and leave a comment, but only if it's 5 stars and only if the comment's nice, because we just spent 17 minutes breaking down pretzels, and where else are you going to get that sort of stuff? Nowhere. Or you can listen on Google Play, Art19, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or your washing machine. Thanks again to JJ Redick. Thanks to producer Colette, producer Rich, thank you, and producer Azzy.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks to all of you for listening. Bye. Love you. Mean it.